So it's my pleasure now to invite our next speaker and lecturer and leader through some practice as well, as I understand. And I'll just give a very brief introduction of Dr. Ranjini George. Born in India, having lived in Kenya, the US, and the Middle East, Ranjini is a well-known writer and mindfulness education instructor. She's trained in various wisdom traditions and studied with a variety of recognized teachers around the world. She's currently teaching in the School of Continuing Studies here at the University of Toronto. She emphasizes that mindfulness meditation helps us to figure out what exactly is going on in our lives. It's a time when we choose to be fully present in the current moment, and when we link this to spirituality, it grows the self emotionally, it grounds our negative energies, and can fill ourselves with the positivity of divine energy. She believes that meditation helps her in being awake to the radical grace of being alive. And I would say I agree with that myself. Dr. George holds a PhD in English from Northern Illinois University, a Master of the Arts in English from St. Stephen's College in New Delhi, India, and a Master of the Fine Arts in Creative Writing from the University of British Columbia. She has taught at universities in Oman, Dubai, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as now here at the University of Toronto. More recently, she won the first place in Canada's inaugural coffee shop author contest for her travel memoir, A Work in Progress, Miracle of Flowers. In 2019, Dr. George received the Excellence in Teacher Award, and her book, Through My Mother's Window, was published in Dubai in December of 2016.
Thank you, James. And thank you, Dr. Timothy. It was a beautiful talk. So much of what you said resonated so deeply. We all use different languages in our different traditions, but we talk about the same thing. How is, Saint Teresa of Avila's, her words that you quoted, that prayer, really the highest act of prayer, is surrender. And our desire as human beings to make good use of our precious human life and live as a restored human being. So we all do this in different ways. We climb the same mountain, the same spiritual mountain in different ways. The voice that you heard just now is the voice of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. Thai, as he's called by his students, has a beautiful retreat center in France and in other places. And in Plum Village, that I visited some years ago, if you enter the meditation hall, there's a beautiful stained glass of Christ and Buddha embracing. And that same photograph is what I have in my meditation room. It's just beautiful being here in this surrounding. I was mesmerized by the stained glass that you have right up here. So thank you for inviting me. So in 40 minutes, it's impossible to cover all the Eastern traditions. I have studied with teachers like from the Hindu tradition, especially Sri Ravi Shankar, from the Sikh tradition, Harinam Singh Khalsa, and then from the Buddhist tradition, and of course the Christian tradition. So I will focus in this presentation, I will touch a little bit on Hinduism and I will touch a little bit of Sikhism, but we will really focus on Buddhism. The shawl that I'm wearing is from the tradition of Lama Sultrian Alyon, who is from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, where I also teach in Taramandala in Colorado. And so let me go into the concept of meditation. In Buddhism, there is a lot of focus on meditation. Some call it a philosophy, a way of life, a psychology, a way of training your mind. I was drawn to Buddhism in my 30s. My life was falling apart. I was doing a lot of praying, but I was waiting for external circumstances to change. But nothing was really changing fast enough. I prayed, I complained, I found myself in a state of great unhappiness and confusion and doubt. And at that particular point of time, I came across the teachings of the Dalai Lama and Pema Chandran. And I found that there was a way that even as I kept praying, there was a way that I could actually train my mind. So Buddhism really focuses on that aspect of really training your mind. Dr. Timothy talked about the love of a mother. And in Buddhism, we use that image very often. In Buddhist practice, we tune in to our emotions. We tune in to our anger. We tune in to our suffering. And we tune in to our unforgiveness. We notice that it's there. We don't shame it, but we cradle that part of us like a mother cradles a child. So the image of the mother, like a mother cradles a child, and we bring to it the energy of mindfulness. So part of the practice in Buddhism is that present moment, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, wonderful moment. And Dr. Timothy touched on that all our obstacles, all our struggles, all the difficult things that we go through in life is the path. It's not something that we wish away, but it's something that we use, that it becomes compost from which fruits and vegetables can grow. So our suffering is not garbage. We don't suffer unintelligently. And there's so much of suffering. There's so much of suffering. The first noble truth that the Buddha says is life has suffering. There's suffering in our world. We've experienced it, tremendous suffering. My son is at the University of Toronto in the medical school, and they had a memorial for a student who had died in the plane crash. There is so much of suffering in the world. There is so much of suffering within our human heart. So how do we deal with the suffering? How do we use the stuff that life brings us? And how do we make it part of the path? Trungpa Rinpoche, a Tibetan Lama, says the obstacle is the path. So through these practices, really, I started noticing where my mind was at. And I started using these practices to train my mind. And as Dr. Timothy said towards the end of his presentation, he touched on mercy. Mercy. My husband and I traveled to Flannery O'Connor's place, and we bought her home, her childhood home. And one of her books, I can't remember the exact title, but has the word mercy in it. The other word is compassion. How do we train our minds towards compassion? Compassion for ourselves and compassion for others. And Christ, of course, embodies that on the cross. Forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. And it is training, it is practice. It's moment by moment, day by day practice. So before I carry on, I want to actually have you experience mindfulness, a short mindfulness meditation session. So in Buddhism, the image that we use is that we have basic goodness. And the image that we use is that this goodness within us and this goodness that exists in others and in the world outside is like the sun. But that sun is clouded, is covered by clouds. The clouds of our own habitual tendencies, our own neurosis, our own habitual behaviors, our unconscious ways of acting, ways in which we escalate our own suffering and the suffering of others. So in part of the practice of meditation, and what we're going to be doing now is shamatha meditation, peaceful abiding. Part of the practice of meditation is becoming familiar with yourself, is learning to stay. One of the teachers, Pema Chandran, says, like we tell a dog, stay, stay, stay. We learn to stay. So we learn to stay and not act when we are really angry. We learn to stay and not act unskillfully when we are, jealous. So we learn to stay even as storms of grief and, come up. We learn to sit on the cushion and we learn to stay. So meditation has sometimes been called our best friend, and I think of it as my best friend. It's a way of actually developing maitri, loving kindness, growing familiar with yourself. And as I practiced and grew familiar with myself, I started seeing things that I did to escalate my own suffering. So there are things we have no control over, but there are things that we have control over, and we have control over our minds. Thich Nhat Hanh says that mindfulness is a source of happiness. He also tells us that as we bring ourselves through the practice of mindfulness into the present moment, the pure land or heaven then becomes here and now. He says that in every moment of your life, the conditions for happiness exist. Present moment, wonderful moment. So that even, he says, for a blind person, so if you can see, remember, even as you're going through a lot of suffering, if you can see, remember that for a blind person, being able to see is paradise. If you can walk, remember that for someone who can't walk, that is a gift. So I use these ways of training my mind, even when I went through things. I brought myself to the present moment, and I listened to the bird song. I remember when I got the news that my father was dying, and there was so much of grief, and I was in Dubai and trying to make my way back to the US. But I listened to the bird song. I felt my feet on the ground. I looked at the sunset. I walked. I saw. And I thought that even in this very difficult moment, there is happiness. Present moment, wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment. And that acknowledgement grounded me. So let's just experience this, and it's very simple. There's many of you may know it already, so bear with me. It's as simple as drinking water. So just feel the weight of your body on the pews. So you can, if you have a strong back, you can come a little forward and have your back straight. If you need support, you can lean back. But we are sort of keeping the spine erect. So a sort of strong back. You can place your palms on your thighs. And your gaze is lowered. It's either directly in front of you or 4 to 6 feet ahead of you. So just tune in first, mindfulness of the body, tune into your body. How do you feel? Just sort of relax, acknowledge your body. Unless we are in pain or pleasure, we rarely go into the body. We're caught up in our mind. So just mindfulness of the body. And then connect with your heart. What do you feel? You may feel good, not so good, neutral, tired, sad, happy, exhausted, hopeful, whatever. Notice how you feel. And then bring your attention to your breath. You can think of the breath as a pathway and the mind as a horse. So feeling your feet on the floor, your palms on your thighs, strong back, soft open front. Relaxing your jaw. We hold a lot of tension in our faces and shoulders. Just connect to your breath. May basic goodness dawn. May the confidence of goodness be eternal. May goodness be all victorious. May that goodness bring profound, brilliant glory. So just connecting to your goodness. So I'm going to sound the gong. Thich Nhat Hanh says, listen to the sound of the bell that calls you back to your true home. Listen to the sound of the bell that calls you back to your true home. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. In, out. So just relaxing with your breath. And when you have a thought, it's not a good thought or bad thought, it's just a thought. Touching the thought, letting go, and coming back to the breath. So let's just try this for 1 or 2 seconds. Just keep bringing your attention back to your breath. Your mind wanders, come back to your breath. Okay. So I'm going to move into what is called the Metta, love meditation. You have the handout. For now, you can just listen to me and enjoy the exercise. I often memorize things because, it's a good thing to do that. And so this is something you may choose to memorize or not, or just use it. So I lead you through the practice right now, so you don't really need to look at the sheet, but it's something that if you wish, you can use. May I be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May I be safe and free from injury. May I be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and love. May I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. May I learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in myself. May I know how to nourish the seeds of joy in myself every day. May I be able to live fresh, solid, and free. May I be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. I want you now to think of someone you love. May you be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May you be safe and free from injury. May you be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May you learn to look at yourself with the eyes of understanding and love. May you be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in yourself. May you learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in yourself. May you know how to nourish the seeds of joy in yourself every day. May you be able to live fresh, solid, and free. May you be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. I want you to think of someone you have difficulty with, someone who you find hard to forgive. May you be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May you be safe and free from injury. May you be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May you learn to look at yourself with the eyes of understanding and love. May you be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in yourself. May you learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in yourself. May you know how to nourish the seeds of joy in yourself every day. May you be able to live fresh, solid, and free. May you be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. I want to end, as we extend out, we extend this wish to all sentient beings, to our world for peace, for a world without war and violence. That all human beings may want to live as restored human beings. And connect to goodness. May all sentient beings be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May all sentient beings be safe and free from injury. May all sentient beings be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. So in Buddhism and in Hinduism and even in Sikhism, we use mantras. And the mantras have been recited in temples and for centuries. So for example, the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum means a jewel in the lotus is within yourself. So I have this plastic lotus which I bought from a Vietnamese stall in Dubai. And the lotus does not grow on marble. The lotus grows on from mud. But yet the lotus remains, beautiful and clean and bright. And so the lotus is often used as a symbol of really how that we grow from the mud of our own suffering. And we remain with this aspiration and we cultivate this aspiration to live a good human life. I remember when I was in Dubai and I was going through a lot of things. I was walking on the beach. I used to go early morning because it gets really hot as the day progresses. And I told in my mind, I said, so much of mud. Because I sort of felt the weight of what I was going through at that time. And the words that came to me was more mud, bigger lotus. So the spiritual path, as we all know, is not a pill that we can pop into our mouth. It unfortunately isn't. I sometimes think, how much can I work with this mind? It never ends. It never ends. But as we bring things to light, as Carl Jung says, as we bring things, our shadows to light. Richard Rohr says it, and he's one of my mentors. I love his work. He says, as we bring it to light, we heal it. And I think that's what we're doing. And in Eastern practice, in Hinduism, we use a lot of chanting. People like Krishnadas, some of you may have heard him. It's the same chant that's repeated again and again. And it's a way of quietening the mind. It's a way of stilling the mind, because our mind is always going, going, going. And even though I've been on this path for such a long time, it never ends. This morning, I was thinking of something that had happened over Christmas, something someone said, and it hurt me again. And I thought, they're doing their best. Why am I stewing? It's in my past. But, we constantly work with our mind, and we bring to it loving kindness. We bring to it gentleness. So it's self-love for ourselves and love for others. I'd like to end with a story by Rumi, and who's one of my favorite poets and who Dr. Timothy mentioned. Actually, that's not Rumis. This is another story. I don't know who said this one. This is about 2 earthen pots. And so this servant would carry these 2 pots up the mountain and give it to the master. And one pot had a crack, and the other pot was whole. And so when the servant carried the 2 pots up and reached at the top, one pot was half empty and the other one was still full. So the pot with the crack felt really sad. He said, I have a crack. And the other pot is full, and it has all this water to give the master. And then the master said, think of all the flowers that you have watered on your way up. So wherever we are is good, and the very fact that we are even on the spiritual path is a blessing. We could easily not have been on it. In Buddhism, hell is where you have no access to teachings. And I often think of where would I be without all my teachers and my teachings, without all these wisdom traditions, without all these sacred spaces. So we are blessed to even have, I remember Sri Ravi Shankar saying that devotion is a gift. We are blessed to even have the heart of devotion, to have the desire to learn. So be gentle with yourself. Never give up on yourself. And train your mind. Train your mind, because happiness is there. It's just a matter of training the mind and not giving up. So I have a few more minutes, I think.